I watch The Shining every few years, and each time I find Kubrick has somehow remade it in my absence. It's a rare film that truly rewards repeat viewings because it has so much to offer. You ask 5 people about The Shining and you'll get 15 interpretations, and maybe that's why people can't seem to shut up about this movie. Even after 40 years, there's still things to discover tucked away in the halls of the Overlook Hotel. Every peek around a corner leads to a surfeit of hidden details, and I find myself once again falling into a rabbit hole of obsession.
Okay, let's talk.
The latest of which has been The Shining's use of music and its sinister relationship with motion. Watch the mouth, and watch the hand.
What do you want to talk about?
Alright, Jack, let's talk about an old, early animation technique called Mickey Mousing, and explore how it's used in The Shining to illuminate a presence unseen. Now, you're definitely familiar with this technique. It gets its name from the late 20s Mickey Mouse shorts, but it's what we call any motion, animated or otherwise, that has parallel, synchronized music to accompany it. Like here in Mickey's haunted house, or you can see a live-action application of it here in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man film. Now, today this is seen as a bit of a cliche, and it's mostly fallen out of fashion in modern filmmaking due to its overuse in the early days and its connotation with slapstick comedy. And The Shining is a darkly comedic film in places, in its own Stanley Kubrick sort of way. But Kubrick, together with a man named Gordon Stainforth, who was the music editor for The Shining, chose to use this outdated musical synchronization technique to elicit a sense of horror instead of humor. So rather than using it to solely underline an action like those early cartoons, it's instead used to illustrate the growing, invisible, corruptive influence of the Overlook Hotel. An influence we can hear every time Jack pitches a ball, or pitches a fit, or angrily tears a page from his script. Traces of that unseen corrupting force are everywhere, manipulating the scene from above like a malevolent marionettist, twisting Jack into its own instrument of havoc. You can't quite see the strings being pulled, but you sure can hear them. Music is a powerful presence in The Shining, but there's one piece in particular that's used almost as an avatar for the evils of the Overlook, and it's through that song that the horror becomes alive and tangible. What you're hearing is Bela Bartok's music for strings, percussion, and celesta, and it can be found sprinkled all throughout The Shining. But the third movement of this piece, the Adagio, is most prominent in these 3 scenes, and the degree to which it dominates these scenes intensifies as the Overlook's grasp tightens on the Torrance family. The first time we hear it is in the maze. Jack looms above with a cold gaze, observing his family like toys in this diorama waiting to be played with, then mirrored by Bartok's sinister melody suggesting a similar gaze overlooking Jack with the same intent, a twisted reflection that not only complements the symmetry of the labyrinth itself, but also the music this evil has manifested itself as. Because just like the hedge maze, this music was designed with symmetry in mind. Bartok famously structured this composition to be a palindrome, with the architecture of the piece having an A-B-C-D-C-B-A arrangement, where each moment begins as it ends, which makes it perfectly suited for The Shining, both thematically and visually, given its abundant use of symmetrical iconography, such as twins, mirrors, and patterns. The next time we hear Bartok is just a few scenes later at the door. Only a whisper at first. The room calling out to him as he rolls past, and with the string of that violin cast out like the line of a fishing rod, room 237 has its hooks in. Danny's curiosity is caught, and this is where that Mickey Mousing really starts to reveal itself. Music editor Gordon Stainforth aligned this cue so that every movement Danny makes from this point would have a corresponding note. Listen close and watch each turn of Danny's head and his steps leading up to the door. Stainforth said he wanted to use music as a manifestation of fate, a doomsday of judgment coming ever closer, he says. With traditional Mickey Mousing, syncing music to action or vice versa, there's a restrictive nature to that technique. Ultimately, one's going to dictate the other. But The Shining is unique in that all the laying of the music tracks was undertaken after the final cut of the film was established. None of the scenes were choreographed to the music. They were all, in fact, rehearsed with completely different music played on set.
Keep it low, come on. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Keep coming.
Even though it appears Jack is in step with the tune in the ballroom, the music you're hearing is not the same music he is. Here's what it would have sounded like on the day. It adds an extra layer of real-world eeriness that Jack is dancing along to music we aren't privy to, like he's lost in his own world that's only coincidentally in sync with ours. But the strangest occurrence of synchronization is found in the third and final use of Bartok's piece, and that's with the talk between Jack and Danny in the apartment. So this is probably my favorite scene in The Shining. I think narratively it's the most important, and it's the most technically impressive scene in the film from a music editing perspective. This is also where that Mickey Mouse sing... Would you look at that? Anyway, this is also where that Mickey Mousing is at its most conspicuous, and it's deceptively simple. It's two characters sitting on a bed talking in a single, flat, unbroken two-shot. Now, before we take a look at the scene, let's break down the material we're working with. The shot lasts 2 full minutes, nearly to the frame, in a single, unbroken take, so no coverage to hide behind. And the music used is a pre-existing composition that was chosen after the edit had already been locked. And we'll get to why that's special in just a minute. But essentially that means no coverage, no cuts, and no changes. But even with those limitations, Stainforth was still able to structure the edit of the music to seem like it was influencing the conversation between Jack and Danny. You can hear how rising or falling inflections in dialogue are met with a mirrored musical intonation, like with a violin glissando that creates this sort of double conversation, where there's a rise in the melody for each question and a fall for each answer. And this is what it looks like.
Dad? Do you like this hotel?
And I love this bit right here where the melody seems to answer for Jack before he can form a response himself.
I do. I love it. Don't you?
You really get the sense that whatever eldritch terrors lie in wait under the cursed grounds of the Overlook Hotel fully have their hooks in his mind at this point. And it slowly becomes apparent that Jack might not be the only one speaking after all.
I wish we could stay here forever.
And ever.
Ever.
And ever.
Ever.
Okay, so for all other instances of musical synchronization, there could be an element of coincidence, maybe. The skilled hand of a music editor guided by Lady Luck. But for this scene, the music is shaped so perfectly to the contours of that conversation that it had to have been rehearsed on the day, right? Maybe planning out the pattern of the dialogue to match the rhythm of that piece right before shooting the scene, or maybe a click track on set so the actors at least have a tempo to work with. But what's wild is there wasn't even supposed to be any music in this scene. This entire sequence really was written, rehearsed, shot, and edited without any intention of adding score whatsoever. Kubrick thought the power of this scene was in its silence, and Stainforth had to come in at the last minute and fight like hell to convince him otherwise, which makes it all the stranger that this feels like it couldn't have been made any other way. And that's the story with most of these iconic musical moments in The Shining. None of it came together until the last possible stages of post-production. And without Gordon Stainforth and his incredible late-game music editing contributions, this would be a very different film. Think about how little flexibility there is in that process, yet it feels so utterly uncompromised. Fitting a pre-existing composition in between the natural ebbs of the cadence of the dialogue, all without altering the original phrasing of that composition. And that's how Stainforth referred to his method, creating one whole big musical, visual, emotional phrase, where the score shapes the atmosphere and becomes an extension of the drama as it unfolds. and the two become so tightly entwined that they're nearly indistinguishable. Music doesn't just hang in the air, it weaves into and bleeds out of every single word.
I'm very confused.
And it leads to some terrifying moments where music will even seem to leap out of a character's mouth, like with the strike in Wendy's shriek.
Here's Johnny!
Or Jack's roaring echo. God, I love that cut. There's also a great visual rhyme here with Danny and Wendy that I'm a big fan of. There's an inherent musicality and rhythmic pace to all of Kubrick's films, but nothing else really feels or flows like The Shining. It sets its own distinct language through its audiovisual parody. And that's why, in a film loaded with iconic imagery, when I think back, none of these moments exist in my mind as purely visual. Every cue is so deliberate, so purposeful in its placement, that it feels like the music is baked into the image, and it's impossible to separate the two, even in a memory. Because this sure as hell ain't the same as this.
Come and play with us.
Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos on music and filmmaking, you can head over to Nebula. Nebula is a streaming platform that's creator-owned and operated, where we can experiment and create exclusive series. Over there you can check out some fantastic creators like Lessons from the Screenplay. They've got a great video on The Shining from a few years back, but there's also a bunch of new stuff exclusive to Nebula, and it's all ad-free, so sign up if you don't want to miss any of that. And when you sign up for Nebula, you also get access to CuriosityStream, a streaming service that hosts thousands of documentaries and nonfiction content, like the series Destination Moon, which is a really interesting look at the future of space exploration that I'd highly recommend. And if you sign up using the link, you'll get 26% off, so that's a full year of Nebula and CuriosityStream together for less than $15. And if you sign up before November 28th, you'll get 42% off, which comes in at just $11.59 for a full year. You get a great deal for two great services, and you'll be supporting independent creators at the same time. So sign up today by clicking the link or by going to curiositystream.com/kaptainkristian. Thank you to CuriosityStream for sponsoring this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all very soon.